So my first day back from having a nice life to announce the largest AI infrastructure project by far in history. As you know, there's great competition for AI and other things, and
China is dunking on the United States. We as a country have been having artificial intelligence rammed down our throats for the last year by the big tech and their stooges in the mainstream media. It's going to cure cancer. It's going to kill Hollywood. It's going to replace the entire workforce. You know the pitch at this point.
This will be the greatest technology humanity has yet developed.
As Web 2.0, NFTs, the blockchain, and VR all failed to deliver on the promises of radically changing our existence, such as the smartphone once did, big tech has pointed to AI as the next big shiny object that they are using to justify their existence. They've basically promised us that AI will change the world, but before it does, they need more money. Enter President Trump, who last week announced a $500 billion public investment in infrastructure tied to artificial intelligence. The bill is called
Stargate. So put that name down in your books, because I think you're going to hear a lot about it.
The fucking nerd talk. By the way, apparently now we just talk in Star Trek language. $500 billion sounds like a lot of money, because it is, but it actually only represents a fraction of the $7 trillion that OpenAI's CEO nerd Sam Altman is hoping to raise. That is, until the People's Republic of China dropped a little thing called Deepseek. Deepseek is a 100% free and open source generative AI program that is basically the same thing as America's ChatGPT, which costs $200 a month for comparison. Deepseek was created by a relatively small team of developers in China for a little over $5 million. Again, to reiterate, America's big tech is asking for $7 trillion. China created a worthy competitor to America's best version of AI using a fraction of the money and resources and aren't charging a penny for it. So why do our companies need $7 trillion? Well, because AI in America, like much of the rest of our economy, is actually just a giant pyramid scheme used to funnel large sums of money to the wealthiest people in the country based on perceived value without them having to actually deliver on any of their absurd promises. At the turn of the century, in the Steve Jobs era, tech companies out of Silicon Valley legitimately changed the way the world works. They gave us online shopping, smartphones, and social media. As a result of their real, tangible impact, big tech rose to the top of the US market, acquiring everything in sight and growing into juggernauts with more money than God. However, in the last decade or so, big tech has seen a plateau in terms of innovation. Now, one of the reasons could be because of their habits of acquiring any company that threaten their business. When you have as much money as these companies do, it's easier to just buy smaller companies that have new innovative ideas and absorb or squash them than it is to actually, develop genuinely innovative products or systems yourself. They're a monopoly. So what you end up getting is this big bloated beach whale, a giant tech company that's main value is largely tied to their speculative worth, not their actual material production. These are billionaire nerds saying things and using their money and power to influence government policy, only to cover their asses and ensure their monopoly grift continues.
I get that.
It's all fucking fake. We're not going to be living in Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse. Elon isn't going to Mars, and AI isn't going to change the fucking world. This is what American business has become since the 90s when Bill Clinton signed NAFTA and sent all of our manufacturing jobs overseas. We do not create things in this country anymore. We are now an intellectual economy full of white-collar nerds who make spreadsheets and sell cloud storage.
I just stare at my desk, but it looks like I'm working. I do that for probably another hour after lunch, too. I'd say in a given week, I probably only do about 15 minutes of real, actual work.
And it's only getting worse. Trump's proposed $500 billion investment is being used to further entrench us in this delusional grifter economy. And this doesn't only benefit big tech, but now includes big oil as well. Basically, packaging our taxpayer dollars and delivering it straight to the pockets of billionaires. And of course, this is all happening amongst the backdrop of our country's infrastructure crumbling. The affordability of groceries and housing costs are skyrocketing, where the average person can't afford healthcare, and the national discourse is centered around whether or not trans people should play women's basketball. It may be a good time to look at another country in this world who seems to be faring a bit better than we are in some key categories. The People's Republic of China. Now, to be clear, this isn't an endorsement of China, although, Xi, get at me. We can make this happen. China has their own issues and no country is perfect. However, What the Deepseek situation has illuminated in an increasing amount of Westerners is that not only is our country shitty and getting shittier by the day, but that China is kicking our asses. This was all made abundantly clear with the recent TikTok situation. Anyone who's used the hyper-addictive app understands the ways in which it's superior, or at the very least, comparable to any Western alternative. Yet, American media used the TikTok ban as an opportunity to remind us all how nefarious China was, warning us about this addictive app that collects our data in order to influence our opinions and sell to different advertisers. Literally the exact same thing that Instagram and Facebook do, but this time it's bad because, well, it's China. But once you look past the obvious propaganda that the Western media and corrupt politicians constantly bombard us with, you start to see the bigger picture. That China is a massively thriving world superpower that maintains global dominance by investing in its country and infrastructure, all the while staying out of military conflicts internationally. Take energy, for example. While in the US we still cling to petroleum and natural gas for the majority of our energy demands, Trump is expected to essentially gut all incentive programs for alternative energy so that big oil can continue to make money and stifle innovation. In China, however, the government has been directly funding the development of an artificial sun called the Experimental Advanced Superconducting Tokamak, aka EAST. This is currently the single most advanced nuclear fusion project in the world. Designed to replicate the process that powers the sun and stars, EAST uses superconducting magnets to create temperatures that exceed 70 million degrees Celsius, and when eventually, if ever, perfected and harnessed, could create a sustainable and virtually limitless source of clean energy. And this isn't like science fiction, they've already successfully achieved and sustained the desired temperature for over 17 minutes. And of course, this would be considered woke and gay in America, obviously. Speaking of America, in parts of Los Angeles and the Southwest at the time of recording are still burning, in part from historic drought conditions. 1/3 of America is currently facing worsening drought conditions. This is mostly due to environmental issues tied to global warming. But of the water sources available in America, currently 15% are privately owned by billionaires and agricultural corporations. Those Americans unlucky enough to rely on those privately owned water sources end up being charged on average 59% more for that unique privilege. Water is an increasingly rarefied commodity in the States, but not in China. Privatization of water is illegal in China. The average monthly cost for water to a household is around 5 yuan, or 69 cents US dollars. 69 cents a month for water. And as far as droughts go, China has seen its northern regions dry up due to dense urbanization in cities like Beijing. And as a result, the country has embarked on building one of the largest and most ambitious water transfer schemes in the world. The South-North Water Transfer Project is going to be 2,700 miles of canals, redistributing water from the abundant sources in the south to the drier areas in the north. It's a 50-year project that will cost something like $70 billion, but has potential to guarantee dependable and cheap water access for, many future generations. And then let's talk about travel, right? In America, if you want to travel any significant distance, say more than 100 miles, the vast majority of the time it's done either by cheap, stuffy-ass buses where you have to inhale farts, or expensive, stuffy-ass planes where you have to inhale farts. But in China, the country invested and built an interconnected network of high-speed rail trains that can travel up to 240 miles per hour and are always kept cost-effective, 100% reliable and safe. This domestic investment also extends to all other things that, we're not allowed to have here in America, like providing basic health care to its citizens for almost no cost to the patient. College tuition costs in China are kept reasonable, something like on average $2,500 US dollars a year. And that's for all students regardless of economic background. Listen, none of these things are perfect, and everything I listed of course comes with caveats. But all are examples of China's robust investment in their own people's lives and well-being. What is the last thing you can remember America investing in for its citizens? The Hoover fucking Dam? It's a miracle literally anything at all, good or bad, gets passed in this country, let alone something that actually affects people's lives in a material way. And another aspect to this is just that China is a successful country without having to go to war with the Middle East every other year, or build up fucking military bases up the asses of all sovereign nations, cripple other economies with sanctions, or just generally fuck with other people in the way that America does. And again, China is no stranger to exploiting other countries, such as Africa, for their resources, and their treatment of the Uyghur Muslims has been flagged for alleged mass internment as well as alleged sterilization of portions of their female population. This is, of course, according to the US State Department and has been contested, but if true, those are objectively awful things. But the US, of all countries on this planet, is in absolutely no position to cast judgment when it comes to these topics. And for the record, China strongly opposed America's war in Iraq and Afghanistan and has consistently had the spine to call for an end to Israel's genocide of Palestinians in Gaza. And to acknowledge the elephant in the room, you may have noticed how I haven't used the words capitalism or communism once in this video. Partly because China isn't exactly a purely communist nation. Their form of government would require an entirely different video to explain. But I've also chosen to omit these two distinctions because I think the results should speak for themselves. In the end, all I'm trying to say with this comparison is that there are other ways of running a country. The bullshit voices we all see in our news feeds or the struggles we face on a daily basis in this country are largely not necessary. Our country is the richest in the world, but we're completely divided while a handful of billionaires actively take over our government and our way of life. And it doesn't have to be this way. I repeat, it does not have to be this way. Norway, France, China, all these countries that do other things, they're not like special. They're not that different from us, as people, that is. China is the second most powerful country in the world behind the United States. I think the difference between the two superpowers can be summed up by the American journalist Caitlin Johnstone when she said, "Our ancestors set sail to conquer the world. Their ancestors built a wall.